the difference between what a compound movement is supposed to do relative to a secondary exercise. For example, we did some bench press and some incline presses. Then we went over to some dumbbells. Then we finished off with some flies. Why so, and why in that order? Let's go with the 18-year-old kid. He's going to go in the gym for the first time. He wants to be a bodybuilder. So he wants to have that shape. Does he have to train heavy? Does he have to do the compound movements? Something I always try to talk about is just common sense. Magazines or websites or anything that's putting out information has to continue to put out information, or it's not going to survive. It's a magazine. And so I've always talked about that, like the eat grass and grow diet. I'm sorry? Oh yeah, eat grass and grow. This is a new thing. I couldn't make up anything else, couldn't come up with anything, so I wrote something. That's the whole concept behind magazines, is they're going to take something, change it a little bit, and try to come up with something. And a lot of the information that's out there gets diluted or misled in a way. And you use the Bible, and I always use like the law. You know, the law is an interpretation. And that's why nobody wants to go to court. They want to settle because it's the same sentence for both sides, and they can argue it two different ways. And with exercising, it seems like there's so much argument about what's right and wrong, when we're all just trying to do the same thing, is get better. And so with that being said, coming into this and teaching these guys, everybody out here that's watching, the difference between what a compound movement is supposed to do relative to a secondary exercise. Like yesterday, take an example, we did some bench press and some incline presses. Then we went over to some dumbbells. Then we finished off with some flies. Why so, and why in that order?
Yeah, so the contrast, like the bodybuilder versus like the power lifter, would probably be a good way to start in contrasting training muscles and training movement, right? Compound versus isolation, or compound versus accessory. Like for me as a power lifter, my technique work is training muscles and isolation. Like I'm constantly practicing the skill of squat, bench, and deadlift. But when my squat, bench, and deadlift break down now as an advanced lifter, it's going to be because of weak triceps in a bench press, or weak delts in a bench press, or weak pecs in a bench press. Whereas an early adopter to of training a movement, it might just be a lack of coordination with the movement itself. So defining and breaking apart like who's performing which one of these movements. Like you have a novice powerlifter, a novice bodybuilder, an advanced powerlifter, and an advanced bodybuilder. Like failure for all four of these categories is going to be different, right? For novice, it's usually going to be technical error. Like you can't really grow your biceps until you understand that there's a skill to a bicep curl. Just as there's a skill to a bench press, just as there's a skill to a squat, and there's a skill to a quad extension, right? So once we've kind of broken up, okay, who it is we're talking to, we can start to address what the benefit of training compound versus training isolation would be. And I think a lot of people, again, they get dogmatic, right? Whereas bodybuilders just going to do isolation stuff, right? Like, oh, I don't want to squat; it's bad for my back. It's like, well, you know, we're meant to do that, and like good performance and good aesthetics often go hand in hand. Like some of the best looking bodybuilders I know are also the most functional bodybuilders. Guys who have disproportions are often a representation of asymmetries in performance, right? Like disproportionately, you know, if you have, you know, if you have a weak midsection, you'll probably have small lats. If you have like a weak serratus, you'll probably have small lats. If you have like an unstable pelvis, you'll probably have small quads, right? So breaking apart muscles and movements, you need to realize that like a lot of times it comes down to the medium, right? Like if you're going to use a barbell, train it to build strength and make that be your primary movement. If you're going to use a dumbbell, probably make that accessory. Like that's not necessarily going to be like you were pressing 175 dumbbells. That's insane. But more insane was the 405 barbell incline press you did prior to that, because that's going to be the heaviest potential to load in the nervous system. Then all of a sudden we go from, you know, I went from challenging movement to challenging muscles. And that's going to be the difference between training compound and training isolation. It's like, is the goal to move the bar A to B? Then you want to involve as many muscles as possible. Is the goal of the movement to train the pecs? Because that's going to be totally different adaptation, right? And the way we set up for the exercise, like if you're trying to challenge your pecs and I'm trying to challenge mine, we might have totally different angles on the incline. We might be using different implements. I might be better off with like a a cable because I need to create a lot of internal rotation to align my humerus with my sternum angle, where you might want to use a decline press or a flat press. So I think there's certain rules to training movements that we need to consider, like what gravity is constant. I don't care like where you're from, what color you are, that gravity is going to pull to the center of the earth. We're making sure that we align ourselves in the most efficient way possible to train movements and purposely create inefficiencies to train muscle. Because we want to make things, if you're trying to train a muscle from origin to insertion, try and make it as hard as possible so you have to use as little amount of weight as possible. Because as you start to scale that strength in isolation, you're really going to start to be able to scale your progress.
There we go. For anybody that's beginning, recommendation, let's say hypothetically, you got let's go with the 18-year-old kid. He's going to go in the gym for the first time. He wants to be a bodybuilder. So he wants to have that shape. Does he have to train heavy? Does he have to do the compound movements? What is your take?
No, I don't think so. Honestly, we train at Gold's, and Dexter Jackson also trains at Gold's. Like, to be a bodybuilder, necessarily, do you need squat, bench, and deadlift? When's the last time you worked it for a while? When's the last time Dex squatted?
No idea.
I've never seen it.
Dex squat, it's been decades since I've seen him squat.
Right.
Yeah.
So but then to draw a comparison, he's 6 years younger than Ronnie?
Yeah.
Right? And he's probably 8 less back surgeries than Ronnie. Ronnie's a legend for the things that he's done. And, I don't think anyone will ever have that sort of lore around him. But he was also taking an 800-pound double in a single ply suit.
And wanted more.
Yeah.
And wish he did more.
12 days out from the Olympia.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can be an incredible bodybuilder without this. I think in order to be able to squat and squat heavy long term, it is going to be an expression of good function. Like, if something goes wrong, it's going to go wrong in the squat. If your knees are going to hurt, they're going to hurt on a squat before a leg extension. They're going to hurt on a squat before a hamstring curl. So if you're using these movements, this can be a light on the dashboard for you as a bodybuilder that you need to maybe assess your function of your hips, pelvis, shoulders, spine, whatever. But if you want to skate and just challenge muscles, you can absolutely do that, but you're putting yourself in a very, very small box. Because all of a sudden, what could have been, my knee kind of hurts on a squat is, where are you going to go when your knee hurts on a quad extension? How are you going to train your quads? Right? It's going to hurt on a hack squat. It's going to hurt on a leg press. It's going to hurt on a walking lunge.
Done.
You're done. You backed yourself into a corner. So I think it's an incredible tool for bodybuilders to use because it gives you real-time information of what's coming down the track. Like, knee pain is going to start on a squat, and then you pull the squat away. It's like, okay, well, maybe fix whatever's wrong with your hips or ankles that's causing that knee pain, rather than just going, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Now, I didn't set you up to go in this direction, but I'm going to keep going this way because of the fact that you came in and started being a strength coach up at Stanford for the rugby team. Is that correct?
Right.
So you're working with athletes first, in a sense, for that portion. And one of my beliefs is that I was an athlete first, and I powerlifted and I bodybuilded and I did martial arts, but I was always an athlete in my mind first, and that was the most important thing to me. And so when it came to powerlifting, it was proper form, the explosion. When it came to the bodybuilding, it was, okay, now let's stimulate the muscle. But during both of them, what's my range of motion? How can I put myself in the strongest position, move the most weight? And then how can I put myself in an awkward position and still move a good amount of weight in a weak position? So that way I can continue to do this for a long period of time. And again, go back to the point of knees feel good, hips feel great, lower back's good, all this is fine. I can keep doing this. For you, what is it that if the kid walks into the gym 18, they're both 150 pounds, they got to put on size, again, both just start stimulating the muscle, or is there something that we can kind of teach them outside of form, outside of just building muscle, about connective tissue or bone density or nervous system and those kind of things, to where we can enhance them athletically?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that. So stress is what we'll call an aggregate. So your body has a physiological response to stress. Stress is training, but stress is your cell phone bill. Stress is your mortgage. Stress is the guy who cut you off in traffic, right? We only know one physiological response to stress. And if exercise is meant to be a quantifiable stress that we progress over time, knowing how to cope with stress physiologically, psychologically, that would be where I would start with an 18-year-old, because that's where most 18-year-olds don't look. They don't realize that their SAT score, SAT score is 18, I don't know. Is that too old?
1650, is that what
16?
it's?
Yeah.
Back
Well,
when I took it in 1932, see what happened.
Right. But like, that would be the biggest thing that I think needs to change in the shifted mindset. Cause like, I could sit here and be like, well, you know, we could do plyometrics, we could do isometrics, we could do all this other training related stuff that you can probably find somewhere else on the internet. But understanding like what I was a strength and conditioning coach at one of the most prestigious universities in the world. I had two students that would come into me, two players that would come into our session, that the professor they had before was Condoleezza Rice. Yeah, if you're in with politics, that's a pretty big name.
Even if you're not into politics, you know the name.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm sitting there, a 25-year-old meathead in a weight room. It's like, I got to be able to bring him. But I also need to understand, like, I couldn't imagine being 18 in a position where, look, these people are not going to pay their bills playing rugby, right? They're going to be the CEOs of Forbes 500 country, or they're going to be Secretary of State, or they're going to be president or whatever. So it's like understanding the stress. It's like, look, some days where it's like you just came off a road trip, middle of the season. You're in a business undergrad, and Condoleezza Rice is your last professor, and you have a paper to write tomorrow. That's hang clean that we were going to do with a barbell is now box jumps, right? Being able to drive the same intention of the exercise of here's explosive power, but here's minimal skill and less stress, because you're already peaking in your stress, right? So that would be the biggest thing that I would like, a frame shift in mindset around training to indoctrinate into kids that age. That will see you further along in your career. And go, oh yeah, no, like do squat, bench, deadlift, and then do your accessory
I
movement.
love that.